Welcome, Mr. President. Honored to have you on my show.
Nice to be here, Walter.
Well, let's get right to it, shall we? You're rumored to be not much of a man for small talk, so let's get right at it.
Well, I'm working on my niceness skills. Trying harder to, play better with the Republican friends on the Hills, and response to your efforts to build bridges between the red and the blue states. But you're right. I'd rather talk policy than engage in chit-chat.
Okay. Well, so, let's see, a month or so into your first term as president, you were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes, the award came as quite a surprise to me and as a bit of an embarrassment to me as well.
You were, per usual, quite eloquent in your address accepting the prize. You said you were humbled to be in the company of Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi, men who had dedicated their entire lives to the goal of peace and nonviolence. You also paid homage to the priests, nuns, and political prisoners who in silence had done more to promote world peace than you had in your few short months on the world stage.
Yes, it was indeed humbling receiving this award.
But you also laid out the case that as president, you would need not only to take steps to defend America, but you laid the case that at times you would need to order troops into harm's way in order to liberate other people from tyranny or end genocide.
That's right.
And you've done so. You've continued our involvement in Afghanistan, for example. And you've also now are bombing the Islamic State soldiers in Syria and Iraq.
Yes.
You gave bombing assistance to the Libyan freedom fighters in ousting Gaddafi.
Yes, would like to add that it was without the loss, without a single American airman or soldier. Though, since then, we have lost 4 of our diplomats to a terrorist attack.
In the former part, all well and good. But did you ever, for a minute, think of taking a completely different tack in your presidency?
For example?
Suppose on day 1 of your presidency, you had issued an executive order directing the entire American military to thereafter not fire a single shot, missile, or weapon, except in self-defense.
Well, to be honest, I would have been impeached in less than 3 months.
How so?
Because on day 2 of following such an order, Taliban or Al-Qaeda would have sought to take advantage of such an order and attacked our troops somewhere, inflicting casualties.
But under my scenario, our troops could have used their weapons in self-defense.
Yes, but play this out. Now, we need to be smart on issues of national security. So, suppose, let's say Al-Qaeda sent in 10 of their mujahideen to attack one of our embassies in the Middle East. And suppose they killed 2 or 3 of our Marines, and our Marines killed 5 or 6 of their terrorists. And the surviving mujahideen retreated to a place, let's say, a mile removed from the embassy. The question on the table would be whether, under my executive order, would the Marines be free to send an expeditionary force to kill and capture their assailants?
Okay, suppose the answer is no.
Well, there you have it. The outcry on Fox, CNN, even WNBC would be angry, loud, and incessant. They would show pictures of on TV, of the dead Marines 24/7. They would interview their wives and children, TV commentators, newspaper columnists. They would all be in full cry, labeling me as a coward, unfit to play the role of commander-in-chief, and Al-Qaeda. They are smart propagandists. They would get film out on Al Jazeera of the surviving mujahideen assailants holding up pictures of me, taunting me as a coward. The American public would be in frenzy, and Congress would be holding hearings, emergency hearings. And before the week was out, they would impeach me. My lawyers would be in front of the Senate, defending my inaction and not bringing the assailants to justice.
All right, I suppose that your executive order could provide that our troops could counterattack your assailants.
Well, there you have it. That is Afghanistan in itself. We were attacked on 9/11, and ever since we have been trying to eradicate the evil people who killed 3,000 American citizens on American soil. And we strive to make sure that they do not have a safe haven to plan any more attacks against our people.
But what Senator Paul's arguing, and it may be true, is that all of our efforts to kill off Al-Qaeda have made us less safe, not more safe, by authorizing so many troops or by authorizing so many drone strikes. You fostered more and more enemies against America who are plotting continuously to strike back against us.
Well, it's worth debating. But in my judgment, we are far safer today, for example, for having killed Osama bin Laden than we would be if he were still in his fortress plotting his next attack against us. And not to mention that we also have now obtained a measure of justice for our 3,000 citizens who died on 9/11 in killing the man who planned to fly those jets to the Twin Towers and then the Pentagon and then the plane that falls into the Pennsylvania.
But I do wonder, what would happen if an American president, the commander-in-chief of the foremost military force in the world's one superpower, announced one day that he would no longer use his military except to ward off aggression? If we vowed to no longer fire a single weapon in anger, what would the world look like after 8 years of such an American presidency?
Well, Walter, it's a nice fantasy.
It's sad, isn't it, for your mother, from what I've read about her, including from your own biography, Dreams from My Father, that she would have wanted you to pursue such a course of action.
My mother was a dreamer. Yes. Yes, she was. Bless her heart.
She would have been very proud of you for becoming president, that's for sure. But she would have been even prouder of you if you had become known in history as the peace president.
The question on the table is really this: whether I would also be viewed by history as the president who ushered in America's decline.
But by using our troops in the way that you have, you've become just one more leader in the just one damn thing after another course of history, when you could have instead conducted a global experiment to see if peace could be advanced if the strongest nation on the planet laid down its arms.
Well, Athens tried that 2,000 years ago. And they lost their place as the focal point of learning and beauty on the world stage. Rome got complacent, fat, and content, and was burned by the Viscounts. We would suffer the same fate.
You really think so?
I do. I'm afraid.
You unduly discount the role of nuclear weapons. The Kims in North Korea are insured a 1,000-year reign because of their nukes. Same with the Ayatollah in Iran, if he ever gets nukes. Gaddafi would never have fallen if he had had nukes. As Piers Morgan said in his talk show about eliminating assault weapons, he said, what good are assault weapons going to do against the U.S. government if it became tyrannical? The U.S. government has nukes.
Yeah, not the most intelligent or even political I've heard from Piers.
True, fine. But the point is that we're not going to be taken down by an enemy if we have nukes. At least we're not going to be toppled by a foreign aggressor like the Visigoths sacking of Rome. Anyway, let's move on. The commentary had all say that the key factor in deciding who's going to be our next president is whether or not he or she is, quote, strong on national defense, unquote.
I would agree with that. I think that's true.
Okay. It's interesting to me, what the public is figuring out, in essence, is whether or not the person that they choose as president will be a cold-blooded killer. Now, I played paintball with a bunch of buddies and their wives, and we set up this terrific ambush, which failed because my wife refused to pull the trigger. I mean, she didn't have it in her to kill, even in a game. Ms. Clinton had shown that if she was in the same situation, that wouldn't be her, making her presidential material. But is that what we want in our leader? I mean, isn't there something wonderful to be said about my wife's lack of bloodlust?
Oh, well, I think that's pretty harsh. I don't see it as that with Mrs. Clinton. We are just comfortable that she will be strong on national defense.
But then, why am I off the mark? Doesn't that mean, in essence, that she has the stuff to order our men into battle?
Well, America is looking for someone who is fair, someone who can be trusted, a person who looks out for all Americans person that will not play favorites.
I agree with all that. The great thing about democracy is that campaigns and elections weed out the psychopaths. It's, the American people seem to have a strong ability to make sure to pick people who can be trusted in public office, where psychopaths, on the other hand, have a good ability to take over countries without democratic conditions.
Yes, the American electorate is looking for someone who can think strategically on the world stage to promote and foster America's interests.
But in this area, in the sphere of national defense, they're looking for someone who will not hesitate, if necessary, to pull the trigger. One reporter once asked President Reagan how he felt knowing that one day it might take 40 minutes to decide whether to launch nuclear retaliation to a perceived nuclear attack. Reagan's response was, "No, the Russians have subs off our coast. I might have as little as 9 minutes." The Russians knew that Reagan had the moxie to hit the red button. He never could get quite so sure about Jimmy Carter.
Well, to be honest, Walter, I don't think this conversation is very conducive to allowing our people to sleep at night.
Okay, all right.
If you don't mind, let's find the topic, shall we?
Sure, no problem, sir. It's setting nukes aside. Still, the American electorate looks for someone to be their leader who will not lose sleep over ordering our soldiers to pull the trigger. Did you lose sleep when you ordered the Navy SEALs to put a bullet in those pirates' heads like Mogadishu?
Not a moment. To be honest, I did not hesitate at all in giving that order. I did not lose a bit of sleep second-guessing my actions.
Okay, and that's no surprise. Everyone knows that. That's your steel reserve, your toughness. That is one of the reasons that you were elected president, sir. America would not have chosen you if they had not seen that in you on the campaign trail. Just between seeing the history of your fighting in Chicago politics and your Harvard in-school fighting and your, I don't know, just the cut of your jaw, they knew that you could be strong on national defense. I don't think that we're ever quite so sure about Ron. He seemed just goofy enough that we didn't know if he could be a killer. But we knew you could be. That's a key reason you want a second term.
You know, somehow, Walter, I'm not saying that as a compliment.
I suppose it's not, sir. Let me read from your Nobel Prize acceptance speech, right from the top. It is an award that speaks to our highest aspirations, that for all the cruelty and hardship in the world, we are not mere prisoners of fate. Our actions matter and can bend history in the direction of justice. And then you said this.
We must begin by acknowledging a hard truth. We will not eradicate violent conflict in our lifetimes. There will be times when nations, acting individually or in concert, will find the use of force not only necessary, but morally justified. I make this statement mindful of what Martin Luther King Jr. said in this same ceremony years ago. Violence never brings permanent peace. It solves no social problem. It merely creates new and more complicated ones. As someone who stands here as a direct consequence of Dr. King's life work, I am living testimony to the moral force of nonviolence. I know there is nothing weak, nothing passive, nothing naive in the creed and lives of Gandhi and King.
But you didn't have the strength of these convictions. You didn't risk establishing more peace for fear that Fox News would call you passive, weak, naive, for fear that Congress would oust you, for not being man enough to stand up to our enemies. You could have made your mother so proud by risking ridicule and impeachment for peace. What better way to go down in history than as the St. Francis of presidents?
I am not one to forsake my responsibilities made under oath. When I placed my hand on Lincoln's Bible on the steps of the Capitol, before all the nations, before all the world, I swore to protect and defend my nation. I could not be guided by the examples of King and Gandhi alone. I knew then, and I know even more now, that I face the world as it is. I cannot stand idly by in the face of the threats of the American people. Now, make no mistake, evil does exist in the world, and nonviolent movement could not have halted Hitler's armies. Negotiations cannot convince Al-Qaeda's leaders to lay down their arms. To say that force is sometimes necessary is not a call to cynicism. It is a recognition of history, of the imperfections of man and the limits of reason.
You didn't fight for peace. You didn't fight for peace.
And what exactly would you have had me do, Walter?
I do wish you were more of a Prince Hamlet, that as you sat in the Lincoln bedroom, your Harvard-trained analytical skills and your mom's moral upbringing, it might have caused you to forsake revenge killings halfway around the globe.
No, I am no Prince Hamlet. Not on this score, Walter.
But it's sad when you look back. You were positioned to be the first peace president. But instead, the world is even more violent than when you first got into office. You can see that, can't you?
That's not the right question. The question really is, what would the world look like if I had taken the course that you had suggested instead? I'm not sure that our world would be more peaceable if we had taken your approach.
Well, I guess we'll never know until some president musters the strength to give a unilateral peace posture a try.
Well, okay. There you have it. You have anything else, Walter?
Okay, well, you could have done this in your first term, but you still have time to do it now. And I know, believe me, it's a pipe dream, but it's worth pursuing. I recommend that you call the summit conference asking for the Sunnis and the Shiites to hash out their differences.
Okay. You see, here's a problem with such an effort. You may be surprised, but I have given this some thought. Now, the West's relationship with the Middle East is just like the same poison relationship that I have with so many Republicans in Congress. If the Sunni or the Shiite leaders respond to my call to meet, many of their constituents brand them as traitors. And it's easy for an outsider such as me to say, well, why are you fighting over such differences? Can't you see that you all pray the same God, Allah? But the Muslim world will see my plea as based on a shallow misunderstanding of the profound nature of their rift.
I see all that, which is why you might take a different tack in trying to persuade them. Argue that the rift is visiting massive pain and suffering on the Muslim world, and that suffering will only benefit the infidels, though I wouldn't use that word literally. Can you imagine the capital that has fled Syria since the 3-year civil war started there?
Billions.
Where is that capital going?
Well, tragically, most of it is literally going up in smoke.
Okay, and the money, the gold, the rest of it?
The Swiss banks, the shopping malls in Tulsa.
Okay, precisely my point.
Mm-hmm.
Tell the Muslims, if they want all their wealth to just come back west, if they want all of the West's oil money payments to just find their way back to us, fine. But if they want their wealth to support their own people and their own needs, they need to stop their infighting now.
Okay, I agree. I'm going to get Secretary of State Kerry to start working on that convention to get that summit convened by fall 2015.
Are you patronizing me, sir?
No, I'm not. I'm dead serious.
Okay, all right. Now that we're getting somewhere, I have a few other proposals.
Okay, shoot.
Okay, take Mexican War and Civil War General Scott statue down from Scott Circle in D.C. and replace it with a Walt Whitman statue. And rename it Whitman Circle. And then pull down General Logan's statue in Logan Circle in D.C. and replace it with a bust of Herman Melville.
No, can't do that. General Logan is like, well, he is the patron saint of the VA. We can't touch him, nor should we.
Okay, fine. All right, how about we take down the Stonewall Jackson from across the street from the White House in Lafayette Park and replace him with Herman Melville. And then for the next run of Stonewall Jackson $20 bills, we replace those with Emily Dickinson 20s. Stonewall killed a lot of Native Americans. We paid him enough homage.
Okay, I'll give it some thought.
All right. You know, my second proudest moment as an American was when I toured New England by car 20 years ago, and specifically aiming to wind up at the Emily Dickinson Museum in Amherst, Massachusetts. I got drunk in Boston the night before, hanging out with my drummer nephew at the Berklee School of Music. So I didn't actually get to the Amherst Information Station until about 3 p.m. on a weekday afternoon. And when I got there, the docent looked at me and he said, "We have no Emily Dickinson in Amherst, sir, nor is there one anywhere else." And I vowed at that moment to start one. My goal was realized when, 10 years later, with my efforts and with a grant of $2 million, that there finally was an Emily Dickinson Museum in Amherst.
Well, good for you, Walter. Your country thanks you for your contribution.
And see. Shoot, hopefully I said that.